Good afternoon and welcome to Wizards World. I am Jim Redondi. Today, we welcome back Brian Rademacher with Waterways. You may recall, Brian was our very first presenter at Wizards World when he led a series of webinars on this fabulous river cruise line, and he is back once or twice since then. Today, Brian will give us an update on what to expect with AMA and river cruising as the world starts to open up to travel again. As a reminder, we appreciate it if you would mute yourself so there is no background noise during the presentation. And if you have any questions, please use the chat box and we will get to your questions at the end. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the presentation. Take it away, Brian.
Thank you, Jim. Greetings, one and all. Welcome to our webinar, our virtual world that we continue to live in. But the good news is, as Jim alluded to, things are definitely on the mend and changing. That is, AMA Waterways announced last week, we'll be starting up again in the rivers in Europe in July. So as a matter of fact, this backdrop behind me is where we're going to start. I'll lean over here. That is the Douro River in Portugal. So we will begin with the Douro in Portugal on July 3rd. So we'll ramp things up starting in July. There'll be more in August, even more in September. And it looks like by October, we'll be back in full swing. That's the plan. And so we're very excited about that because obviously we've not been cruising as a river cruise company. You know, we missed all of last year and we've missed this year so far. But anyway, I'm coming to you from Petaluma up in Sonoma County, and I'm the sales guy for AMA Waterways, of course, for Northern California. And today we're going to just take a look at, I'm calling this the iconic rivers, Rhine and Danube Rivers, which, you know, are certainly, it's almost like saying the Missouri, the Mississippi, rivers that certainly are world renowned. These two rivers are certainly that as well. So we're going to take a look at these rivers. Often first-time river cruisers are drawn to these rivers, but even river cruisers from the past who have done these rivers have reason to go back and do them again because they are that compelling for sure. And I want to say thank you to Jim and everybody certainly at Travel Wizards. You know, we don't advertise as a company, almost nothing in advertising, unlike some of our brethren in the industry. But what we do is rely on our partnership with folks like Travel Wizards, and they're very supportive. So literally 97% of our business comes through the traditional travel agency channel, right? So we're kind of unique in that sense. Not a lot of advertising and pretty much everything through the travel agency channel. So these kinds of events like we've been doing, I've done over 200 of them since last spring. This is the way we've been reaching out to talk to Travel Wizard clients like you folks. So thank you again for joining us today. We really appreciate it indeed. And Melissa Kulhanjian, as you know, is the owner, and I've known her for quite some time. That's me with a suit on, which hopefully that suit still fits when I pull it out of the closet at some point here to go back out. I guess June 15th will be the magic day. We'll see what happens. Hopefully we all get to go back out in full swing when California opens up officially. And then again, thank you in many different languages for coming today. We like to show this picture for certainly the evocativeness of the photo itself. It's quite beautiful. That's the Moselle, or Mosel as the Germans say, or the Moselle as the French say. We'll talk maybe a little bit more about that river. Today is mainly the Rhine and the Danube, but that is a very beautiful bucolic river in and of itself. But oceans, as you know, take you to the countries where rivers take you through them. So they're similar in that they're both on water, but they're very different in many other ways. You're always within a given country's boundaries, right? And you're always a stone's throw away from shore, certainly. So there are many things about river cruising that made river cruising very popular pre-COVID that are making it, again, just as popular post-COVID. People are also gravitating, for the most part, we think, the idea of ships that average around 150 guests, thereabout, that number might also, this intimacy factor of river ships might also be appealing to people as well. So our name AMA comes from the Latin word amare, which means to love. So we always make these heart symbols. And so we like to say we are the heart of the river, right? And that is indeed true. And then this is obviously the map of where we go. We're primarily in Europe, as you can see, but we're also on the Mekong River in Vietnam and Cambodia. We're also in southern Africa on the Chobe River between Namibia and Botswana. And this September, coming up in about 4 months, we're starting a new product on the Nile River in Egypt. And actually, Travel Wizards has a departure there, special departure on the new Amadalia, the ship that's coming in Egypt. They're going to do that next spring. So if that is of interest to you, just reach out to your travel counselor or travel advisor at Travel Wizards if you have an interest possibly in hearing more about the Nile River trip coming up next spring. But as you can see, we are, again, primarily European based, and we cover the length and breadth of the European continent, certainly all over the place. Some of the more popular areas, obviously the Rhine and Danube. We have over 20 different itineraries that incorporate the Rhine and the Danube. But other places that we're finding to be popular are here, Portugal and Spain. You know, as I said earlier, that's where we're starting up initially in July, is on the Douro River. So again, very popular, not new itinerary, but we have a newer ship there. So we have 2 ships there. Also, for reasons we'll get into, the Netherlands and Belgium, because of Floriade. Floriade is happening next year. We'll talk about that. And of course, we're all over France, Bordeaux, Provence, Burgundy, the Seine, and up here into Normandy. That's very popular. And then another area, we won't spend much time today because we're going to do mostly the upper Danube, but the lower Danube, right? From Budapest down to Bucharest, this lower Danube area taking you to places like Serbia, Croatia, Romania, Bulgaria. We're finding a lot more interest in that particular area, the lower Danube, right? So again, all over Europe do we go. And then we have 25 ships that we operate. 3 new ships that are coming this year, Ama Lucia, the Amadalia, which I mentioned for Egypt, and then the Ama Siena. Ama Lucia and Ama Siena will be in Europe. The cool thing here, we say young in that our median age, the median half older, half younger, our ship's median age is about 3 years old. So we do have a young fleet as it goes, and very innovative fleet as well, which we'll talk more about. The other cool thing is all the ships are paid for. Very old-fashioned. We operate in a very conservative, fiscally conservative way in that we pay for our ships as we buy them, all right? We don't pay on credit or debt. We literally pay for them before they're built, and they're all paid for in 0 debt. So this is our fabulous trio, a terrific trio of our heritage in terms of our owners. Rudy's Austrian, Christina's German, Eastern Germany actually, and Gary Murphy's of Irish heritage. Rudy is the acknowledged godfather of North American river cruising, and I'll get into that here momentarily. He grew up on the Danube River in Vienna. His wife, Christine Karst, she grew up just outside of Dresden on the Elbe River. And then Jimmy Murphy, Gary's dad, he was an entrepreneur who started Brendan Vacations and then decided to get into the river cruise business with Rudy and Christine. And it'll be 19 years ago, coming July 1st. So again, for sure, both anecdotally as well as officially, Rudy is truly the godfather of North American river cruises. He was the very first president of Viking. He was asked to be the president of Viking, which you normally don't mention in your competition, but he's helped get his hands on and fingerprints on 3 other river cruise lines that he helped start. And Viking, he was the first president, but he didn't own those. So he decided to start AMA Waterways back in 2002. What Rudy did and why he's the godfather of North American river cruising, this Main-Danube Canal opened up in 1992. And what this is right here. So this is about 106 miles long canal. Charlemagne wanted to build it. That's how far back the history goes, right? There's, I think, 13 or 14, maybe quite a few locks. You gain over 1,200 feet in elevation up and down. But anyway, what this did was it connected the North Sea with the Black Sea, such that you could, I'll go back, you could get on a ship in Amsterdam up in the North Sea and stay on that very same ship 2,200 miles later and get off in the Black Sea, all right? But that's only because of the Rhine-Main-Danube Canal opening here, right here, that connected the Rhine with the Main with the Danube, right? So Rudy said, and he was living in America at the time, that river cruising was going to be a really good thing to do and to focus on. So he was the one that got things going way back then. So that's what opened up river cruising to North Americans primarily, was when this canal opened up. All right. So I won't read the slide to you. I don't like to read slides to you, but the value of a river cruise is listed here. Some of these things may be more important to you than other things, right? But you'll hopefully find some things on that list that are appealing, certainly. And there are a number of things that are appealing to me. I don't like crowds or long lines. I like that a lot. I do like that we're on smaller ships with less guests, right? I like the inclusive nature of river cruising. We'll talk about that, how pretty much everything is included. And we're going to talk about the fact there's no seasickness. You have to literally look out the window to see if you're moving, because some people don't like to admit they're subject to motion discomfort. But in our case, literally, you have to look out the window to see if you're moving. Now, why us specifically? Why AMA Waterways? Again, you can look through that list and sort of see the things that might jump out at you. I've talked about the financial stability here. That in the travel sector has been important over the last 15 months because the travel sector has been hurt, right, due to the pandemic. We are certainly stable. The other thing is the highest level of hygiene and cleanliness. I'll mention that because that's something we've always done. That's not just we're Johnny come lately, like, oh, gee, we better clean up our act and be very hygienic and clean. We've always done that, but now we talk about it for obvious reasons, right? So again, these are all our brand truths, our marketing truths, if you will, that we bring to the table. The other nice thing is who chooses to do business with us, right? So Disney, they mystery shop. You know, Disney has ocean ships, beautiful ocean ships. They don't have river ships, but they darn well know they better offer river ships to their clients through their Adventures by Disney company that they have. So they went out and mystery shopped every river cruise line, North American-based river cruise line, and they came knocking on our door. So they are one of our biggest customers. They charter from us 30 times a year. So it's our crew, our ships, et cetera. Backroads is a Berkeley, California-based company. Same thing. They came to us. They do active travel, mainly tied to bicycling. So they do biking trips along the rivers, and they use AMA Waterways as their way of doing the rivers. And these two are new relationships. National Geographic, their river cruises are now going to be with AMA Waterways. And then this is the newest relationship as people are interested in tracing their heritage. And many of us do have European heritage, certainly. And if you send your little violin of the saliva to Ancestry.com, you'll find out all kinds of interesting things about your DNA. But in any event, they are starting to do Ancestry.com river cruises. And again, that's with us. So I like to show some of the folks that have chosen to do business with us. Here's another cool thing. There were 58 river ships operating on the rivers of Europe last year, and only one was a North American company. That was us. How did that happen? Well, we chartered the AMA Christina to a German tour operator, and they operated for 4.5 months from early July to middle of November. And they operated obviously with German-speaking guests. We had some Dutch and Belgians on as well. And so that was on the Rhine River last year. So we say the word successful here, and you might say, well, cash that out. What does success mean in your terms? Well, for me, there's many things I could say, but the two things I will say, number one, we had no cases of COVID, so zero COVID. Now, that was design intent, right? And it did happen that way, that we didn't have any COVID happen at all. The second thing is the operating experience, as it says there, was invaluable. I use the sports metaphor that it's always better to be in the game than on the sidelines, and hearing anecdotally, what is it like to be in the game? No, we were in the game. So we were able to put into practice the various health and safety protocols. And quite frankly, as we start up here in July, here shortly, we will employ some of these and maybe all of them we're going to start employing when we start to cruise again. But we had that 4.5 month experience as the only North American brand to have that experience. So I want to make mention of that. If you want to go here, amawaterways.com/travel-updates, this just goes into more detail about what it is we did back then. And again, what we'll bring forward as we start to cruise again. And by the way, the rules of engagement are changing supposedly on a daily, weekly basis. So, you know, we roll with it. We have our European contacts. So, but having operated already, that gives us a leg up. Now, we know that people want the peace of mind of knowing that their travel company that they use Travel Wizards to book through to come cruise with us, we're going to be around, we are. But you also want flexibility to be able to change your mind. Travel insurance is crucial. Number one, you got to have travel insurance. But these are two other programs that just add and augment, if you will, the programs that we offer: Ultimate Cruise Flexibility and Travel Waiver Plus. Your travel counselors at Travel Wizards can tell you more about it. It just gives you an added level of peace of mind and flexibility both, and that's been extended through the end of June. So again, bottom line is that we want you to have the flexibility you want, to be able to change your mind, that kind of thing. So those programs are in existence. So indeed, the rivers continue to flow. And that used to be the only thing I would say there. The rivers continue to flow. But today I got to add, we're back in July. Yes, we're going to be back in July. So that's very exciting indeed. Another cool thing about being on a river ship is every day is a sea day rather than a sea day. In other words, there's always something to see, something really compelling and engaging to see. Not that sea days, the SEA days, are not lovely. They are. I love those too. It's just that's one of the key differences between the ocean and the river is that, again, you're always so close to shore and there's always something really interesting to see. The other thing I like about river cruising, in turn, we'll get more into the Rhine and Danube momentarily, but you're always in the heart of the destination, the heart of town. And that is because these towns and villages and cities that you visit, what? They emanated, they grew up from the river, right? And so they established commerce amongst themselves, frankly, on the river. They were the roads of old. In many ways, they're still the roads to this day that have commercial traffic as well as river cruise ships. But the nice thing is no schlepping. I like that word schlepping. You don't schlep at all when you're on a river cruise because everything is so close by. You literally walk right into town. The other nice thing is we have these twin balcony accommodations. They're very popular, our most popular twin in the sense that you have a traditional balcony here with 2 chairs and a table, and also a French balcony here, the sliding glass door. People, North Americans in particular, love balconies, mainly because they've had them, for example, on their ocean ships. So they want to carry that over to the river ships. So we do offer that. By the way, you've seen Berlitz here a number of times. We're happy that Berlitz loves us. So their mystery shoppers go out. The writer of the Berlitz Guide, he's too famous. He's like the famous restaurant critic where the chef sees him coming and says, get the best steak. Yeah, so the mystery writers go out and they rate all the ships. So the last few years, we've been the highest rated river cruise line in Europe by Berlitz. This is the lounge bar area, just to give you an aesthetic sort of feel of what our ships are like. This is really the living room, if you will, the living room of the vessel. And you will spend a fair amount of time here. There's lectures, et cetera. We have dancing in the evening, but this is a key area where people do gather, so you'll enjoy that. By the way, when I say gather, I may have mentioned this earlier, but we're limited when we start up to 75% of the ship's capacity. Last year, we were limited to 100 guests. This year, it'll be 75%. So that might be a little bit more. No, it's right around the same, actually. So that maybe will change over time. We'll see things. That's the key. Things will change over time, but that's initially what we're hearing. The dining on board, because let's face it, we're so spoiled here in Northern California, but the dining is superb. I love this quote. Anybody can make you enjoy the first bite, but only a real chef can make you enjoy the last bite, from Francois Minot. And since we're on the culinary page, I have to have a sip of wine. So in any event, the dining, as I say, is fantastic. The cool thing is, I read this the other day, we have no microwaves on board. I was like, what? We have everything is freshly prepared, literally no microwaves, and such that we do have freezers, but only for ice cream, right? Only for ice cream. So again, the food on board is superb. We're members and the original members in terms of the first river cruise line to be invited to join Chaîne de Retousseur, which in French means the goose cookers. And you can only be invited to Chaîne de Retousseur, or La Chaîne as it's called, if you have the highest standard of culinary excellence, and we do indeed. I like to say that we've always practiced distancing or social distancing on our shore excursions. Why? Because we have much, much smaller groups. The ship's capacity breaks up into pace levels, late riser, special interest, you have so many choices during the day that people go off and do what they want to do and then go at a various pace level. And so we never really have more than 15 or 20 people on a tour, right? So that's always been the way it is with us. And so that smaller group activity will, again, be, I think, appealing to a lot of people in the current environment. All right, now let's jump to highlights of the Rhine River. And I'm going to do something here because I want to look at some special notes that I made. So I'm going to take myself off camera for just a second, if you bear with me, because I love some of these notes that I made about the Rhine earlier. So we'll go into it now. There's your map. Of course, I love maps too, but the Rhine, and we're going to kind of go south or north to south, but this is the traditional Rhine River cruise, Amsterdam down to Basel or Basel back up to Amsterdam, right? And the Rhine is, and again, having to choose between Rhine or the Danube, you can't go wrong on either one. They're both very, very compelling, right? This area in here, you're literally going to see more than 40 different castles, which is kind of hard to believe. And so it's sort of, the Rhine is known like sailing a fairy tale. That's kind of how it's viewed. And there's, again, so many wonderful experiences that you'll have along the way that we'll talk about. This area in here, down in the Strasbourg area, this is called the Alsace. And the people that live in the Alsace-Lorraine as it's known, they don't call themselves French or German, frankly. They say they're Alsatian. And that's because this part of France has been Germany, and this part of Germany has been France. And so the Rhine has been the dividing line, but it's a very unique and interesting culture that blends both German and French cultures here, right? Heidelberg, absolutely fantastic. Rudesheim in terms of the wine tasting, Speyer. So again, an absolutely wonderful, wonderful way to go. And you have opportunities to stay in Switzerland, pre or post cruise, in Zurich and in Lucerne. So we always offer nice pre and post. You do the same here in Amsterdam, right? You have pre or post option there. This is new. On the Rhine, you can also, instead of doing Switzerland as a pre or post, instead you can go to Lake Como in Italy and stay at the beautiful Hilton Hotel on Lake Como, right? So that's a 3-night land program. And the nice thing about our land programs is the cruise manager who's with you on the ship is always with you at the hotel. So you have your own like private concierge. So yes, Lucerne and Zurich, both wonderful places to visit on a pre or post option are available to you. The other thing I'll mention real quickly, and Jim and I were talking about this before we started the webinar, we are finding that people like longer cruises, right? So this is the Moselle, as I said earlier, beautiful river. You can, if you are so inclined, look to combine the Rhine and the Moselle. So get 2 rivers in, and this river is incredibly bucolic, very serpentine in nature. And for frankly, the cruise managers in Europe, many of them say, when I ask them, what is the most beautiful river in Europe, your favorite river in Europe, invariably they say this river, the Moselle. So just a heads up that you can combine the Rhine plus the Moselle on a 10 or an 11-night program and then do 2 rivers. Of course, Amsterdam, wonderful Amsterdam, world-class city, 160 canals that are here. And of course, the museums. Lots and lots of wonderful museums here in Amsterdam, including the Rijksmuseum, which is the National Museum. And of course, everyone wants to go to the Van Gogh Museum as well. Both absolutely worth visiting. A little insider tip, if you've not been to the Anne Frank house, you need to book that early, right? And the story of Anne Frank and her family and hiding in Amsterdam from the Germans, etc. That's something you don't wait till you get to Amsterdam to make your reservation to do that particular tour, just a heads up there. Of course, a popular time in the Netherlands is in the spring, even though we have a new itinerary now called Best of Holland and Belgium that goes beyond the spring, but people like to go to KEUKENHOF Gardens, which is an explosion of millions of flowers, and it's only lasting for a short period of time in the spring. So people are enamored with visiting KEUKENHOF Gardens, and now next year, every 10 years, is Floriade, which is a horticultural show. You can go to floriade.com and see all about it. But it is, if you have any interest in horticulture, you should think about going to Floriade. It is incredible. I went about 20 years ago, and I'm not much of a green thumb, but it is quite impressive. And next year, they're focusing on the green cities of the future and what those cities are going to look like. And leave it to the inventive and ingenious Dutch, with the windmills and the dikes and wind power and all of that, to really come up with an interesting presentation in that regard at Floriade. So many of our Rhine itineraries, lots of them, will give you time at Floriade next year. So that's a reason to be further dialed in, if you will, on Floriade or on the Rhine, because of the opportunity to go to Floriade. So this is your opportunity. That's one of those 40 castles. So you cruise along during the day, and you might be up here on sun deck and listening to the cruise manager give his or her talk about the various castles that you're seeing. So you do have that nice opportunity to take in, again, the scenic views and hear the history. It's really, really quite nice indeed. Now, if you're so inclined, we do have 25 bikes on board. So there are wonderful biking trails along the river. That was another wine break. Thank you. I got to wet my whistle. So this is nice in the sense that you can take the bikes out on your own, or you can go as a part of a guided tour. Either way, that's very popular. And if you go as part of the guided tour, there's always 3 guides with you. The guide at the front for the fastest, guide at the rear for the slowest, and then our onboard fitness instructor, our certified wellness instructor, is with you as well. So that's nice. We also, speaking of that full-time fitness instructor, so say you're cruising along the Rhine and it's a nice sunny day, you can go up and do fitness classes. So they're there strictly for your fitness. They do yoga, they do stretching, cardio, you name it, all kinds of different classes. And they're, again, only there to offer that to you. That's kind of nice. You then come to Cologne, Germany, wonderful Cologne. And speaking of wonderful, this Cologne Cathedral is one of the top 3 most visited sites for tourists in Germany. A Gothic cathedral. And by the way, it was very little damaged in World War II, which in Germany, that's saying something. Part of the reason it was very little damaged, and this is kind of hard to believe, but true, is the Allied pilots, both British and American, used these spires as navigational aids, right? When they were on their runs in Cologne. So they left, frankly, and I'm glad they did, left those alone. So you have to visit the Cologne Cathedral. It is absolutely magnificent. One interesting little side note, and that is the 3 wise men, Melchior, Balthazar, and Gaspar, their relics are here in the Cologne Cathedral. So that's one little, again, side note, but absolutely incredible to visit. So you can then walk over and visit after that, go do a little 5-minute walk to the Kolsch Beer Hall, because if you like beer, the Cologne people, they make, that's Jim smiling now. I knew that would get, so yeah, the Kolsch beer, and I'm now always looking for Kolsch beer around here, if I can find companies that make a Kolsch style beer. But of course, the Cologne folks will say, well, the best is made here. So you can go to the Kolsch Beer Hall. That's a true German experience, and sample some Kolsch beer and some wonderful German food along with it. We also have a unique exclusive visiting this Dornstein Castle in Berg-Langnach, Germany. So we do try to sort of under-promise, over-deliver, and kind of deliver unique and interesting events that are only for you as our AMA guests on board. So that's a little hint, a little sneak preview. Then you come to Rudesheim, and again, we're heading from north to south. And Rudesheim here, this is pictured in the fall. And by the way, I have a webinar that's called The 4 Seasons of the Rhine, or the 4 Seasons of the Danube. There are appealing reasons to go to each of these rivers at various seasons of the year. They all have unique aspects to them in the different seasons. So this picture, you can tell, is taken in the fall. It kind of reminds me, living up here in Sonoma County, sort of the colors we get in the fall as well. So there's hiking, there's wine tasting. The Rudesheim area also, then you can head on off to Heidelberg, which is on the Neckar River. It's not on the Rhine River, so you do a little about 40-minute bus ride, if you will, to Heidelberg. It's a university town. One of the best medical schools actually in the world, certainly in Germany, is here in Heidelberg. Steffi Graf has a home here, the famous German tennis player. You do go up to this Heidelberg Castle, really stupendous, worth visiting. We also give you a lot of free time. We're known to give a lot of free time. You do get the highlights, and then you get to walk into Heidelberg and walk along their Strasse and do some shopping and that kind of thing before you head back to the ship. The Heidelberg Castle is definitely worth a visit. You then come back into the Alsace we are now, in the Alsace region of France and Germany, and you come to Rijkwier. Now, Rijkwier is the town that Disney was so enamored with that they modeled the town in Beauty and the Beast, the movie Beauty and the Beast, after Rijkwier here. So when you look at this picture, you kind of think, gosh, that looks like it could be at Disneyland. I mean, but it's the real thing. It is so charming, so wonderful, wonderful food, wonderful shopping. I have a little painting that I bought there, so you'll enjoy the day here in Rijkwier. You then come to Strasbourg, right? Again, sort of the capital of the Alsace area. Wonderful, again, food. The culinary experiences here are fantastic. You also have a chance to come here to the 12th century Strasbourg Cathedral. Again, we all know the cathedrals in Europe are sort of endemic. They're all worth visiting to a certain degree. At some point, you might say, okay, take me back to the beer hall, but nevertheless, the Strasbourg Cathedral has this astronomical clock that is beyond belief. And you have to be there to see how it works. And this got fully working in the 18th century, but it is the most interesting, unique astronomical clock I have ever seen. And obviously the person who put it together, whose name I don't have in front of me, total genius, right? So you'll want to spend some time in Strasbourg here to see that. Now, you also may decide, again, this is back on the notion of maybe doing a little something more active. So you can go back over into Germany and do a little hike in the Black Forest. So we do offer, again, it's a wide variety of excursions from very sedate to much more active, but that's because it's up to you. You pick and choose what it is you'd like to do. We then end our cruise in Basel, Switzerland, which is at the confluence really of Switzerland, Germany, and France. Literally at the airport, you walk outside the airport, you make a left turn, you're in France, you make a right turn, you're in Germany. So Basel is absolutely beautiful. It's our operational headquarters in Europe. And here in Basel, then, if you do the post-cruise stay, you'll head off to Lucerne and Zurich, or you'll head for Lake Como in Italy. So that's a traditional sort of 7-night Rhine River cruise. I want to mention a couple other things. We have over 60 departures with guest winemakers. So this region on the Rhine, primarily known for Riesling, but there's other varietals as well. We have these wine cruises where you can come and be on board with a guest winemaker who knows the area. You do wine tastings, paired dinners, etc. So these are kind of fun to be aware of. And you can ask your advisors at Travel Wizards, and they can dial you in on a special wine cruise. The other thing, I picture this Christmas markets. This happens to be in Gengenbach, Germany. So Christmas time is another time to think about doing the Rhine River. That's obviously fall, winter season, but again, very unique. This happens to be the world's largest Advent calendar. This is the City Hall, and they turn it into the world's largest Advent calendar. And then you have the beautiful shopping stalls. And by the way, the artisans, many of them, they work on these gifts for the Christmas markets all year long. These are not things you're going to find at Macy's for Christmas. These are things that are made locally, a lot of hard work and heart and soul put into them. And then you've got the various wines, what's called mulled wine, Glühwein, if you will. Anyway, just plant the seed that Christmas markets might be an opportunity to go and do something quite unique. And the cool thing is you're always out with the local families because they're there enjoying it with you. Okay, I'm gonna have a sip of wine as we move to the Danube River. All right, so we're gonna talk about this particular river and a traditional 7-night cruise, which is from Vilshofen, Germany to Budapest in Hungary, right? So going from this, in this case, from west to east, taking in Germany, the Czech Republic, Austria, Slovakia, and Hungary, right? And by the way, this area in here, which I'll show a slide here momentarily, this is called the Wachau Valley. The Wachau Valley, I'm not saying it correctly like a German speaker would, but Rick Steves, Mr. Europe, calls the Wachau the quintessential river cruise experience in all of Europe. So that's a Mr. Europe expert, Rick Steves. So he loves the Wachau Valley, and he thinks that is the end-all be-all as an experience on a river in Europe. Yes, you have the opportunity to do a 3-night Prague, Czech Republic pre or post cruise, or you can do Budapest 2 nights pre or post cruise, right? So that's the map. Prague is fantastic. If you've not been to Prague, I highly recommend Prague. Again, Prague, unique in World War II history because it was not necessarily a military target, right? The Germans occupied Prague. But in 1945, when the Russians were coming from the east, the Czech resistance made a very wise sort of offer to the Germans who were stationed in Prague, who wanted to hightail it out of Prague because they knew if they were captured by the Russians, that meant certain death. So the Czech resistance made an offer that they would not impede their egress out of Prague if they did one thing. And that one thing was, as the Germans were wont to do as they exited a town, was lay waste to it, right? And say, goodbye, we're going to destroy your town. So they came close. They only destroyed one building. So they left Prague in order to escape and get away from the Russians coming from the east. So they left Prague as a true time capsule, right? So it is amazing architecturally. So you have a chance to do a Prague pre-cruise or a Prague post-cruise. Highly, highly recommended. It is a wonderful, wonderful city. All right. This on the Danube, you have these beautiful open landscapes that you'll experience and enjoy. And in particular, as you go through, as I mentioned earlier, where Rick Steves likes, the Wachau Valley. This is a UNESCO World Heritage Area, right? That is quite beautiful. Small towns and villages, Weissenkirchen, Dornstein, the town of Spitz. So these are all just absolutely, I would say, what's the word? Just, yeah, bucolic and inviting and relaxing and so nice. So you get to visit these little places and visit the wineries here along the river as well, which is nice, or you can bike as well. Now, one thing to mention, there is a ship that's quite unique that is on the Danube. It's called the Ama Magna. There's no ship like this. It's a double wide ship, so it's 72 feet wide. Why river cruise ships all look the same? Because they're all 36 feet wide because they fit through the same locks. This ship can go through larger locks, and these larger locks only exist on the Danube. They're 72 feet wide. So this ship is 72 feet wide, yet she only carries about 190 guests. So she carries only 20% more guests than our other ships, and yet she's 50% wider. So she's very spacious, very roomy. The average category is this, an SA or SB, 355 square feet, full balcony, that's big. That's the size of our suites on our smaller vessels. But on the Ama Magna, that's a standard cabin, if you will. So I just want to make mention of the Ama Magna on the Danube. So starting in Vilshofen, this town has adopted us. So every time you're in Vilshofen, whether you're getting on the ship or you're getting off the ship, there is a big Oktoberfest party, not just in September, but also any time of year where the local townspeople come out. There's the Oompa bands, the beer, the sausages. So it's kind of a fun thing to do at beginning or ending a cruise in Vilshofen. As I say, many of our ships are christened here, and that's because we've developed this kind of love relationship with the town, and they do the wonderful Oktoberfest for us. I wish I had a picture of Melk Abbey on the outside, but Melk Abbey is a Benedictine abbey. And this is a full-time, it's in service now. There's school here for kids. This happens just to be the library. You'll have a chance to visit here in Melk, the Benedictine Abbey. Quite lovely. You'll also, this is like the Lonneck Castle. You have a chance as an exclusive here, as it says, to go to Greinberg Castle, right on the Danube here in Austria. And again, wine tasting, some Austrian folk music and some dancing, and again, an exclusive just for you. When you come to Linz, Austria, you can choose to stay in Linz. Linz is plenty nice. But that day, you have a choice of heading south here to Salzburg and spending a full day in Salzburg, Austria. If you've never been to Salzburg, you must go. I mean, all of us have seen The Sound of Music probably many times. That was filmed here in Salzburg. And actually, you will go to areas where the movie was filmed, along with other interesting sites as well. There's a half-day tour to Salzburg, but I highly recommend you do the full-day tour. Now, if you've been to Salzburg, you might decide instead to head north from Linz. And heading north, you'll come into the Czech Republic, and you'll come to the village or town of Český Krumlov. Again, well-preserved medieval town, quite lovely indeed. lots of interesting shopping things to see, to do here. And if you've not, again, if you've been to Salzburg, you might head north here to Český Krumlov. I love going here. Having done Salzburg a number of times, Český Krumlov is fun to go to as well. Again, we have the biking available on the Danube, just like the Rhine. This is Dornstein, right? And the lovely Dornstein church. This is also the castle where Richard the Lionhearted, on his way back from the Crusades, he said something that didn't sit well with the local officials, and he wound up in prison up in this castle, which you can actually do a hike up to the castle if you're so inclined. But that's such a nice picture of these, again, really nice towns and villages that you'll visit. Yes, there is the Dornstein Fortress hike, and the view from up there is quite lovely. I've done the hike. Yes, some of these are arduous, some of them are less so, but again, it's up to you to pick and choose. Vienna, the city of operas, the city that is always rated last several years as always in the top 5 most livable cities in the world. And it's special to AMO Waterways because our owner is from Vienna, Austria. So Schönbrunn Palace. You also have a chance in the evening, because our ships stay sometimes overnight or late night, to attend a Strauss-Mozart concert, right? And it just has an added allure or appeal when you know you're in the country of Strauss and Mozart to attend a concert like that. Really, really nice. A little under the radar is Slovakia and its capital, Bratislava, which of course was under communist rule for many years under the Eastern Bloc, but is definitely a new and burgeoning, wonderful, and actually per capita is one of the wealthiest capitals in all of Europe, is Bratislava. So the castle visits, there's a Epicurean tour of Slovakian food you can do. So again, wonderful Bratislava. And then of course, you finish here in Budapest. And the Danube divides Buda and Pest, right? The two cities on either side. This, speaking of Disney, it almost looks like artist rendering, right? That picture just is so incredible. That is the Parliament building, right? And we do a cruise by at night when it's lit up at night, and you have to pinch yourself. It is that spectacular. So you have an opportunity to spend time here in Budapest, either on a pre-cruise or a post-cruise. And once again, I highly recommend it. Hungary is a very interesting country. It's been in the news of late, of course, but nonetheless, it's kind of a blend of East and West. And certainly as you head out of Budapest and go on the lower Danube, you're definitely passing into a different culture in the East. Again, I'll mention the fall wine cruises on the Danube. We have a bunch of those as well with guest winemakers similar to the Rhine. And there are different parts of the year. I just happened to mention fall again here. We do quite a few of them in the fall. And we do the Christmas market on the Danube as well. Here, this is Vienna, and Vienna has 22, that's right, 22 different Christmas markets. You're not going to see them all, that's for sure, but you'll certainly get to visit at least 3 or 4. And they're all certainly, and that's where you're going to want to bring a little extra suitcase or a little duffel bag to bring your souvenirs home from the Christmas market. So again, just a thought about doing Christmas time. A quick mention here, this is the lower Danube, right? So now you're talking about moving from the west. You can do a 2-night pre-cruise in Vienna, but you pick up the ship here in Budapest, and then you start heading into places like Croatia, Serbia, Romania, Bulgaria, and we offer a post-cruise if you don't want to do the time in Brasov and Bucharest. By the way, Brasov in this area, this is Dracula country, Transylvania. You can head to Turkey and pick up another continent, because there now you're passing into Asia with Istanbul. But in any event, this is a whole separate webinar, quite frankly, can be done on this itinerary, which is really unique, again, because you're moving from true sort of Central and Western Europe into the East. And it's a whole different kettle of fish as far as the culture, the food, everything. But we're seeing a big uptick in people that want to do this lower Danube and see this part. And it's far less trafficked, I will tell you that. There's far less product on this section of the Danube than, say, the upper Danube. So anyway, again, worth considering for your future river travels. And you do sail through, 5 countries, as it mentions there. All right, now let's talk about some offers for you, because I will tell you, and Jim and I were talking about this earlier, we are seeing a major uptick in beyond just coming to these for information. Now people are coming to these webinars that want both information and then give me something good. Give me something to think about. So this is what you can think about. We don't do 2-for-1s. That's not our way of doing business. Some companies, they jack the price up and then they call it 2-for-1, right? I mean, that's the marketing gimmick. We're not like that. We have a price. There are some discounts, some specials, but here you are, Treasures of the Main and the Rhine. So you'll get to do the Main and go through that Rhine-Main-Danube Canal and then go on the Rhine. Anyway, that's November 9 to 16. On the Ama Prima, we're offering this at 2-for-1. So buy one, get one. Here's the major caveat. You have to make your reservation by the 31st of May, which I believe is Monday. These 2-for-1 webinar deals, they may be going away because we're starting to crank up the business. So this may be a last chance opportunity. We've been doing these offers on webinars and it does get people's attention. The promo code is 2-for-1-VCN, which stands for Virtual Cruise Night. So if you have an interest on Treasures of the Main and Rhine, November 9 to 16, Ama Prima, Captain Joffrey here, then just be in touch with your travel advisor at Travel Wizards, and then they can get you the price quote. But it's basically the brochure. You look at the brochure rate and you're getting 2 people for that price, right? That's pretty compelling. So that's there for you, but only through May 31. Here's the other thing, the extra 100 per person on any 21 cruise, I should back that up, through 23, 21 through 23, we'll offer you an additional $100 per person savings as well. And that's any cruise. This is the 2-for-1. Any other thing, that's just the showing up special for coming today. Will save you the additional $100 as a thank you for coming out with Travel Wizards today. Now, these are other specials. The books are open for 23. You can book 23 now and save an additional 5%, right? We talked about back-to-back. If you decide, you know what, I'm not just going to go for one river, I want to do back-to-back rivers, we'll give you an extra 10% off on the consecutive sailings. We're seeing a lot of this because, as Jim said before we got on, what Travel Wizards are seeing is some of the people that may have had their travel budget they didn't use last year, they're combining it with this year's budget or next year's to then look to do a longer trip. We are definitely seeing that. So we came out with this back-to-back offer. And the cool thing is, our tech wizards in our Calabasas, California, down in SoCal, Calabasas, where we're headquartered, these guys came up with an algorithm that all you have to do is tell your advisors at Travel Wizards sort of what river you want to start on, maybe the time frame you have. They developed this algorithm that shows all the various combinations that you, and so there's not going to be presented of they came up with 17,000 combinations. Unbelievable. But there's some that are more popular than others. So if you have an hankering to maybe want to do back-to-back, you can think about that. A holiday savings, believe it or not, we think we're going to fill this Christmas time. The Christmas market cruises, of the sales that are happening for this year, it's mostly for Christmas markets. So this says 22, but we also have specials for 21. But if you want to think about 22, there is a special called the Holiday Triple Savings that's in place too. But as I say, especially because people couldn't get together last Christmas, we're seeing a lot of new business for this Christmas. Our solo travelers, we very much welcome solo travelers on board. So we have very low single supplements for occupying double occupancy cabins. Now, normally the 10% is just on the fixed windows, but the solo traveler said, we want a balcony. We'd like to have a balcony. So we bumped it up a little to just a 25% solo surcharge to have, as a solo traveler, one of those beautiful balcony accommodations. So that's in place now. Now, you note a lot of these come to an end May 31. Some may get extended, I should say, but because we've announced we're coming back to the rivers, I'm not sure how many, I'm just being candid. I don't know how many of these are going to be extended. So this means you have to kind of act promptly. The other cool thing is Travel Wizards belongs to a consortium, a very prestigious consortium called Ensemble, right? You wouldn't necessarily know about that, but that is a very cool organization that has many members, of which Travel Wizards is one, and they can offer you on a whole bunch of different departures added amenities, right? Additional amenities, shipboard credit, also hosted sailings So bottom line is you're in good shape with Travel Wizards because for all the reasons I mentioned, but also because of this affiliation with this consortium. For our veterans and current, always an extra 100 per person savings, no matter what. Goes with any kind of promo we have. So you have that available to you as well. I'm going to come back on camera here. So the military savings are there at any time. So there's that wonderful heart symbol. And we say thank you from AMA Waterways, and thank you to Travel Wizards and to all of you for coming out today. And now I'm open for questions if we're so inclined.
Oh, Brian, thank you very much for that beautiful description of the two rivers and touching on the other stuff as well. We definitely appreciate it. There is something already into the chat, but before I get to that, I just want to invite everybody else that if you do have a question, to please type it into the chat and we'll have Brian answer in a second. But I want to read this one to you, Brian, because I think you're really going to like it. It says, Brian does a superb job in describing the AMA products, one of the best. He also knows his country's traveled very well. So, it's a very nice compliment from Krista Terstige. So, Krista, thank you for putting that in with Brian. Yes, we love Brian as well. That's why we have him on as much as we do, because he not only knows his product, but he definitely keeps us informed. So, we do appreciate that.
Very
so,
Brian, I appreciate that. Thanks so much. That's very kind.
I did, while others are thinking of maybe some questions, I did write down some things what I think maybe they would like to ask as well.
Okay.
You did mention that your ships are running out at about 75% capacity, and
right.
I'm guessing, and you mentioned that the double wide ship has about 190 passengers. So I'm guessing the other ships run between like 130 and 150, and then it's
the other ships they average about 150. So let's do times 75%. So at about 110.
About 110 is what they're going to. So that's a pretty good, pretty small crowd in a sense.
Right.
So that's very nice for there. I do want to point out, and I appreciate you mentioning the travel insurance and the importance of travel insurance in travel, and not just the cancellation insurance or the offers that you're doing, but the other stuff. Most people don't realize that a lot of their medical insurance will not cover them outside the United States. So, so that's important as well. So I do appreciate you mentioning that. And then docking in the heart of town. I mean, I just think of Rome and how beautiful a city it is. And then I think of Civitavecchia, which is 45 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes outside of Rome, which is where the ship docks. And here on your river cruises, the boats just, you step off the boat, you're right in downtown. And I just don't know if we can stress that enough, how convenient and how beautiful and how great that is for something of that nature.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I was with Princess Cruises for 15 years. And so I certainly, I'm well versed on the larger ocean going ships, which again, very much appealing in their own right. But one of the, again, key things about river cruising is the ease. It's so easy, right? In terms of always in the center of town, always close to shore. It's just an easy way to go. Now, if you've not been on a river cruise and you've been on big ocean ships, you get on a river ship, you think, what? This is all there is, if you're used to a bigger vessel. But then over a few days, you quickly come to realize that intimacy factor is such a big deal. People really are drawn to that. And we, again, dare say that may have added allure, added appeal in the new environment that we're in, certainly. But absolutely, that is key. The other thing, Jim just mentioned something that I'll just echo, and that is our particular travel insurance does have COVID coverage if something happens overseas. That's kind of rare. And of course, the way things are going, hopefully that wouldn't happen to you overseas. But if it did, our particular insurance that we have covers you if you happen to get COVID overseas. I hate to bring up a negative, but we're being fully transparent here. The other question that has come up always on these webinars is, do you have to be vaccinated to be on an AMA Waterways ship? And quite frankly, it's more so, do you have to be vaccinated in the countries that we're visiting? Because those countries are because we're always within a country's boundaries. We're not out in international waters like the ocean ships, right? Which many of them saying you have to be vaccinated, but we're sort of under the edict and rules of the countries we're cruising in. So we've not come out officially as a company to say, yes, you have to be vaccinated to be on an AMA Waterways ship. But because we feel like the countries themselves will do that, frankly, for us, they're going to set the standards in terms of what they're going to say. Now, the other thing I heard today and yesterday 2 times, and that is, this is for cruises coming up shortly, but in order to come back to the United States, a negative PRC test or negative COVID test has to be done within. We're going to facilitate that for you on the ships. If you happen to go this year and the United States is still requiring that to come back, even if we're US citizens, you still have to have a negative COVID test, even if you've been vaccinated. We will facilitate that either on the ship or at the hotel. If you're doing a post-cruise stay, it'll be done for you so you have your negative test to come back into the States. So that's one thing I did hear. But that's, again, as it relates to us starting up here and people that are intrepid that want to go now. And there are people that, you know what, I'm getting out, I'm going to go. So I wanted to mention that.
Oh, I'm glad you did. And as I looked at the castles and the towns and the history that you gave on how some towns were saved during the late 30s and early 40s and the mid 40s by the Allies, how they were saved or how the Russians didn't destroy them, the history and how we were able to save that architecture and that feel of towns that are 200, 300, 400, 500, 600 years old, right. and how they survive. So we appreciate the small history lesson too. We definitely like that. And then one thing that I really touched on when you said no microwaves and no fridge, except for the ice cream.
Yeah.
No freeze. So that to me means that somebody must be going off ship every day.
They are.
And getting some fresh ingredients for whatever is going to be eaten that day.
Yeah, that is 100% correct. You can go with the chefs if you'd like. Yeah, the food is just simply superb. I mean, again, I say we're all kind of spoiled here with our palates being in Northern California because we're so used to really good, fresh food, wine, et cetera. And a lot of our guests come from this neck of the woods, thanks to folks like Travel Wizards. And so they always come back raving about the food, which, by the way, any dietary needs, restrictions, what have you, which there's a plethora of them out there these days, just let your travel advisor know. We let the ship know in advance. And so that can all be taken care of, including gluten-free and all that kind of stuff. So just let us know and we'll take good care of you in that regard. But any special requests as well, just let the chefs know. And I will tell you, one of the casualties of COVID, we heard again today on our webinar, company webinar, buffets, fabulous buffets, boop, they're going away. Buffets are a casualty of COVID. Our owner, Rudy Schreiner, the Austrian gentleman, wonderful gentleman, he said, when I go to a restaurant in Los Angeles and I sit down at a fine restaurant in Los Angeles, they're not telling me to get up and go to the buffet. It's always a wonderful menu and I pick and choose from the menu. So buffets are going away, right? And so that's something as a result of COVID, which, I think we were moving in that direction anyway. And so that's what's happening because, again, obviously, everybody handling the utensils and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so that is happening. So that's one thing I'll mention as well.
Okay, well, folks, we have Brian just for another minute or two. So if you have any questions, here's your last chance to put them in the chat. The last thing that I have to say or ask is I noticed that you did say that there are times when you travel during the day and that there are possibly also times when you're traveling during the night. So yeah. the average time between stops it's probably fairly quick, right? The actual travel time. And I'm sure you want to travel during the day to see the beautiful hills and countryside and the valleys and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's kind of an art and a science. And here's how I explain that. The art of it is that, yes, there are places like the Rhine Gorge with the castles that you want to be in during the day to see them, even though they're lit up at night. And that presents a whole different compelling way to see the castles lit up at night. The science of it is that with the amount of river ships and docking stations and all of that, we have to kind of fine tune the itineraries to meet our needs of when we're supposed to dock. So they balance the art and the science of the itinerary so that you get ample time in the places where you want that time to enjoy the beautiful scenery. Like behind me, you see the Douro River here, very narrow river. The vineyards come right down, steep hill vineyards come right down to the river. And so people enjoy cruising during the day to see this particular area of the Douro, which is also a UNESCO World Heritage Area. A typical day, you pull in fairly early in the morning, which, by the way, we have late riser excursions as well. If you've been up late the night before, enjoying the town you were in the night before, which we always encourage people to get off the ship at night to indulge themselves in the local culture. That's a river cruise is very much culturally immersive. Then you can get up later and go on the excursions later on. But typically you pull in fairly early in the morning, you have a full day, and sometimes into the evening, sometimes well into like 2 or 3 in the morning, like Vienna, before you leave again, right? So it's a mixed bag, if you will, but it's all done to accentuate the things you definitely want to experience during the day, and yet at the same time have the opportunities to see evening culture, because towns are different at night than they are during the day. So it's, as I say, an art and a science. I hope that answers it somewhat.
No, I think it does just fine. Well, I don't see anything else in the chat. So at this stage, Brian, I definitely want to thank you once again for a beautiful presentation, not just tonight, but in the past ones. And actually, like I said, being the very first presenter for a series of webinars back in September of October last year that actually kicked off Wizards World. So thank you very much again. And I think our crowd definitely appreciates it, as was that comment that they said about you and knowing your stuff. And I just love the way that the towns and the areas just roll off your tongue like you're just native to the area myself. And thank you once again also for bringing up the Kolsch. I definitely learned to love it when I was in Cologne many, many years ago in the early 80s. And, you know, it's tough to find out here, and you can still find it here now, but it's just not the same as when you get it from where it's originally from. So it brought me back. So thank you very much for that. And for you regulars or for you newcomers, we do definitely do this every week at 4:30. So we hope to have you back next week. So until then, we bid you good night and farewell. Thank you again, Brian.
You're welcome. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Take care. See you next week.
You bet.